Red Bull's driver situation for 2025 cleared up over the Canadian Grand Prix weekend. Sergio Perez got a contract extension, as did Yuki Tsunoda, with both of them staying on the Red Bull roster until at least the end of next season. But while that answers some of the questions over their lineup for next year, it does pose new questions. What happens to Daniel Ricciardo now? What happens if Checo's blip in form becomes a slump? And what does Liam Lawson now do? One good result won't save Ricciardo, and one bad result won't condemn Checo, but there are problems that need solving for Red Bull, and today I'll check them all out, so don't go anywhere. The news broke just before the Canadian Grand Prix that Mexican driver Sergio Perez would be continuing his F1 career at Red Bull, despite increased pressure on the team. Checo has driven for them since 2021 and during that time has helped win 2 Constructors' Championships, but questions about his performance levels have always persisted. There have also been tensions between him and teammate Max Verstappen, specifically at the back end of 2022, but on the surface, those seem to have been resolved. Apart from that little bit of friction, Checo appears to have been an excellent teammate to the 3-time World Drivers' Champion, rarely causing problems on track, and at times being a vital part of Verstappen's success. But the occasionally shaky form has always been a problem, so the announcement of a contract extension for him was a big surprise for many. The deal could keep him at the team until the end of the 2026 season, but Christian Horner did confirm over the weekend that it was a 1+1 deal, meaning he's guaranteed a drive in 2025, and if Red Bull want him to continue in 2026, then it's much less paperwork to make it happen. The problem is that Perez's shaky form has reared its ugly head again recently, making people question the contract extension. For the second race in a row, Sergio Perez failed to finish a Grand Prix and picked up a grid penalty for the next round in Spain in the process. In a repeat of his fortunes from last time out in Monaco, Perez was eliminated in Q1 of Saturday's qualifying session, leaving him down in P16 on the grid. From there, the Red Bull driver made contact with the Alpine of Pierre Gasly on the opening lap and subsequently struggled to make further ground. Things only got worse for Perez when he went offline and spun off on lap 53 of 70 and damaged his rear wing before limping back to the pit lane to retire from the running. He was later summoned to the stewards and hit with a 3-place grid drop for the upcoming Spanish Grand Prix after being deemed to have driven back to the pits with a significantly damaged car, while Red Bull were also fined €25,000 over the incident. Red Bull had told him over team radio to not park the car, as a safety car at that point would have put serious pressure on Verstappen in the closing laps. A couple of bad races are not the end of the world, but with McLaren and Ferrari closing in on the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull need both cars to score points. If Verstappen wins the Drivers' Championship, but Red Bull lose the Constructors' Championship due to Perez's unreliability, then questions about his suitability for the seat will begin again. Especially now that a VCARB driver has a new contract for next year. 2 bad races is not a death sentence, but a lost championship might be too much for Christian Horner to handle. Yuki Tsunoda also had his contract extended over the weekend. The Japanese driver had had a rough start to his F1 career, and like Perez, was often criticized for his inconsistency. However, this year he has completely turned that around, despite a late spin in Canada dropping him out of the points. 5 points finishes in 9 starts have gotten him to 10th in the Drivers' Championship, splitting the Aston Martin cars and 10 points ahead of teammate Daniel Ricciardo. But with a promotion to Red Bull not appearing to be an option, many thought that Tsunoda might have looked elsewhere for a drive in 2025 in an attempt to move his career forward. VCARB team principal Laurent Mekies said he's been impressed by Tsunoda's improvement as a driver over his 4 seasons in the sport. The step up he's made this year is simply phenomenal, and he keeps surprising us all race after race, Mekies said. There's no doubting his natural speed, to which he's now added a much more mature approach, and this combination makes him a very quick and consistent performer and a great team player. Before signing the contract, Yuki had made it clear that he wanted to see more of a commitment from Red Bull toward him. He did hint at what that might mean, highlighting a potential move up to the Red Bull team from VCARB if Checo doesn't perform. Speaking after Perez had extended his contract, Yuki said, "Even these 2 years, Perez has to still perform, and in this kind of environment, anything can happen. So congratulations to him, and other than that, for me, I just keep focusing on what I'm doing and just proving myself. I just have to grow more, and at the same time, hopefully, Red Bull will understand more or see more of my progress and my potential performance, and maybe it can change in the future." Until Carlos Sainz signs a contract for next season, most of the other teams on the grid will hold off making any more appointments in case the Spanish driver can be tempted into one of their seats. But even if Yuki didn't have many options until that happened, he obviously saw Red Bull as the place with the best potential for him. If Red Bull had signed Sainz instead of Sergio for next season, then a promotion in the near future may have been much less likely for Tsunoda, but with Checo in place, he must still see a future promotion as a possibility. With Tsunoda, Perez and Verstappen all contracted for next season, attention turns to the final Red Bull seat currently occupied by Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo picked up his first Grand Prix points of the season in Canada after qualifying 5th on the grid. It was an altogether stronger weekend for the out-of-form Aussie, and much more in line with what Red Bull will have expected of him when they gave him a chance at redemption after being sacked by McLaren. He was helped by Carlos Sainz taking out Alex Albon ahead of him before Yuki Tsunoda's very scary spin earned him another spot. Nonetheless, you make your own luck in Formula 1, and he had to be in the right place to make the use of those mistakes ahead of him. A singular 8th place finish is a good starting point for a return to form, but it won't be enough to get him a contract for next season, especially with the promising Liam Lawson waiting in the wings. If Dr. Helmut Marko were to get his way, then Ricciardo's exit would already have been announced, but Christian Horner is believed to be the one holding out faith in the Australian. It's also believed to be Horner who made the call to extend Checo's contract. The problem for Lawson and the saving grace for Ricciardo is that the charismatic VCARB driver seems to have a lot of allies in the team. VCARB's CEO Peter Bayer has recently expressed that the current setup they have is working for them. "We're very happy with both our drivers," he said. Of course, that causes problems for Liam Lawson. The current Red Bull reserve driver impressed in his short debut for AlphaTauri, while Ricciardo was out injured, outperforming Yuki Tsunoda while the two were sharing the garage. But with only the one spot left available and no obvious sign that Red Bull want to get rid of Ricciardo, he might have to look elsewhere for a seat. When he agreed to remain as Red Bull's reserve driver for 2024, it was rumoured that if they couldn't give him a full-time drive in 2025, then he would be free to look elsewhere, and that has now been confirmed as the case. The goal is to land him at the Faenza-based outfit, but if not, Helmut Marko's revealed he will be given the freedom by Red Bull to move elsewhere. With Liam Lawson as a reserve, we have a strong driver who contractually can drive for another team if he doesn't get a seat with us in 2025. In that sense, of course, it would be nice if we could see him in Formula 1 this year to get an even clearer picture, but it's a complex issue. We'll have to see how things develop, Marko acknowledged. Despite Marko wanting Liam in a seat, it seems his influence within Red Bull is starting to wane following the internal struggles that rocked the team earlier in the season. Red Bull likely have time to wait and see whether Ricciardo can find consistent form and start to return some regular points. If he can't, then Lawson gets the place. If he can, then Liam might have to look elsewhere. Liam's problem is that by the time Red Bull make that decision, there might not be any spots left on the grid to take. What do you think of the Red Bull driver situation? Is giving Perez and Tsunoda a contract extension the right choice? And what do they do about Liam Lawson now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.